Hello students, today we are going to continue with the same chapter number 1, that is an introduction to the corporate finance part 4. So before we begin, we will have one quick recapture what we have learned in the previous lecture. We have discussed about the working capital and its meaning, definition, some examples and the factors affecting the working capital requirements like nature of business, size of business, volume of sale, production cycle, business cycle, terms and purchase of the sales, credit control, growth and expansion, management ability and external factors. So we have completed with the topic that is in working capital in the last session. So moving on to the further part of the chapter. So before we begin, we'll have an example over here. If a builder wants to build a building, he will appoint an architect who will make a proper planning structure of the building according to the area and the requirement of the building or the builder. So similarly, we need to start a company, we need to have a proper capital structure. So today we are going to learn about the capital structure, its meaning, definition and components of capital structure, and we are also going to learn about the distinguish between the fixed and the working capital. So here, whenever we want to make a building, or the builder wants to make a building, he'll make a proper image or a rough plan to build a building. So builder has to make a proper planning with the help of the architect. So in the capital structure, there are two words that is used, capital and a structure. The very first word is capital, which also means in the layman language money, finance, wealth और एक cash. एक सिंपल लेमन लैंग्वेज में हम लोग इसको कैपिटल को यही बोलते हैं. एंड structure is nothing but the construct something, that is in construction, then to arrange in the proper way or a proper pattern, or to organize in the proper way. So there are two different terms that is in capital structure. So in detail we are going to learn what exactly the capital structure means. Now a company can raise its capital from different sources, that is from the owned capital or borrowed capital or both. नाउ इट डिपेंड्स ऑन द कंपनी टू कंपनी, उनको कितना कैपिटल चाहिए, किस तरीके का कैपिटल चाहिए. अगर उनको ओन कैपिटल चाहिए हो तो दे विल सेल द इक्विटी शेयर इन द मार्केट, दे विल सेल द प्रेफरेंस शेयर्स और रिजर्व्स एंड सरप्लस, दैट इज इन रिटेन अर्निंग्स. Or else if they are borrowing the capital in forms of debentures, loan, etc. So it from different bonds. So if they are using the combination, that is nothing but the security mix, and the capital structure means a mix up of the various sources of fund desired in the proper proportion. And the decided capital structure means to decide about the ratio of the different types of capital, कि कौन सा कैपिटल मुझे कहाँ से लेना है, किस रेशियो में लेना है. बिकॉज सिर्फ कैपिटल लेना नहीं होता है, कैपिटल का हम लोग को रिटर्न्स भी देना पड़ता है इन फॉर्म ऑफ इंटरेस्ट एंड इन फॉर्म ऑफ डिबेंचर्स, सॉरी डिविडेंड. सो इट्स वेरी नेसेसरी टू हैव अ प्रॉपर प्लानिंग, फाइनेंशियल प्लानिंग, कि किस तरीके का मुझे कितना कैश लेना है. Next is then definition, and here there are two definitions given over here. You can by heart any one of the definition. The meaning of the definition for both will be same. The very first definition is by R.H. Wessel. What he says the long-term sources of funds employed in the business enterprises. Second one is given by the John Hampton. He says a firm's capital structure is the relation between the debts and equity securities that make up the firm financing of its assets. Now, thus, capital structure is composed of owned fund and borrowed fund. जैसे कि हम लोग ने पहले के स्लाइड में भी पढ़ा था कि owned fund is nothing but the share capital, that is an equity shares and preference shares. फ्री रिजर्व्स एंड सरप्लसेस, जो भी हमारे पास एक्स्ट्रा रिटेनिंग अमाउंट है वो, एंड whereas borrowed fund represents, that is in debentures, bank loan, long term loans by the financial institutions. So these are the two definitions. You can by heart any one of the definition for your examinations. Now next is then components of the capital structure. So the very first component is an own capital, under which we will learn about the equity shares capital, preference share capital, and retained earning. Now equity share capital is a basic source of finance, and in return we have to give the dividend to the equity shareholder and repayment of capital to the preference shareholders, because in equity shareholders they are the risk bearer, so they are also known as the owner of the company, and they get the dividend at the fluctuating rate. But to the preference shareholder, they don't bear any sort of risk. तो उनके नाम से हम लोग जज कर सकते हैं कि दे कैरी द प्रेफरेंशियल राइट्स, कि सबसे पहला जो भी प्रॉफिट आता है कंपनी का, उसमें से सबसे पहले पेमेंट डिविडेंड का होता है प्रेफरेंस शेयर होल्डर्स को, और अगर कंपनी बंद होती है तो सबसे पहला पैसा उनको हम लोग रिटर्न दे देते हैं एट द टाइम ऑफ लिक्विडेशन और वाइंडिंग अप ऑफ द कंपनी, एंड वी नीड टू क्लियर ऑल द रिटर्न्स टू द प्रेफरेंस शेयर होल्डर. अगर हमारे पास बहुत सारा पैसा है कंपनी के पास, तो कंपनी कैन ऑल्सो रिटर्न द अमाउंट बैक टू द प्रेफरेंस शेयर होल्डर्स, एंड प्रेफरेंस शेयर होल्डर्स कैरी द फिक्स रेट ऑफ डिविडेंड. उनका रेट ऑफ डिविडेंड फिक्स होता है, और सबसे पहला प्रायोरिटी उनको मिलता है इक्विटी शेयर होल्डर से भी पहला प्रायोरिटी उनको मिलता है प्रेफरेंस शेयर होल्डर्स को. थर्ड पॉइंट इज नथिंग, दैट इज एन nothing but the retained earnings. Now it is also known as the reserve capital, plugging back of profit, capitalization of fund, or surplus capital. Now you have to remember all these terms of the retained earnings. Now in simple words, it means a company keeps a certain amount of profit for the emergency purpose or for the capitalization of the company. Now in our family also, we keep some of the cash aside from the salary or income aside for the emergency. And now during the COVID-19 time, most of the people are using that reserve capital. Similarly, company also uses this capital during emergency or for the development of the company. Now it depends on the company to company for what purpose they are utilizing this funds. So next is an borrowed capital. Under that we are going to learn about the debentures. Now it is nothing but it's a form of loan raised by the company, and in return the company has to pay a fixed rate of dividend to the debenture holder. जिसने भी debentures purchase किया है उनको fixed amount of returns देना पड़ता है, that is an interest. Next is an term loan. Now term loan is provided by the bank and other financial institutions. Company has to pay fixed rate of interest in return. Sometimes company may take capital for the shorter period of time, so that depends on the company to company किस reason से उनको पैसा चाहिए और कितना पैसा चाहिए. तो accordingly they will plan out the capital structure कि किस जगह से हम लोग को कितना कैपिटल लेने का है, कैसे लेने का है, बिकॉज दे हैव टू रिटर्न दैट पर्टिकुलर कैपिटल ऑल्सो. सो मूविंग ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट स्लाइड, विल सी द बैलेंस शीट of the ABC Company Limited as on 31st March 2019. You can see the liability where there is given the shared capital, that is an equity share capital at the rate of 10 each fully paid, and preference share capital, reserves and surplus, then the debentures, sundry creditors, bill payables. Then you can see on the right hand side that is an assets, fixed assets, building, plant and machinery, current assets, sundry debtors, inventories, cash in hand, cash in bank. So you must have seen all these things in your accounts. आपने देखा होगा liability एंड assets, जहाँ पे In the capital structure, the entire liability side is covered, कि कंपनी को कहाँ कहाँ से पैसा कैसे कैसे कलेक्ट करना है. Now suppose if the equity share is sold for rupees 1 lakh, preference shares for 5 lakhs, and you are having the capital reserve that is an 50,000 plus the debenture of 1 lakh. So the entire capital structure will be for 7 lakhs 50,000. सो ये कंपनी का अगर आप कैपिटल स्ट्रक्चर देखोगे तो हो जाता है टोटल अमाउंट इट कम्स टू द 7,50,000. So let us move to the next part of the chapter, that is an distinction between the fixed capital and working capital. So the very first point is meaning. Now under the fixed capital, it refers to any kind of physical assets that is an fixed asset, and next, that is an working capital, it refers to the sum of current asset. Now the second point is nature. Now it stays in the business almost permanently. फिक्स एसेट्स को हम लोग फिक्स कैपिटल को परमानेंटली रखते हैं ज़्यादा करके, क्योंकि हम लोग परचेज करते हैं लैंड एंड बिल्डिंग, and it's not movable from one place to another, so it is and we cannot sell it again and again and buy it again and again, so mostly it is permanent. And on the other hand side, working capital is an circulating capital, it keeps changing, कोई फिक्स अमाउंट नहीं रहता है उसका. वी कैनॉट से दिस इज़ फिक्स्ड, बट इट कीप्स ऑन चेंजिंग एज पर द रिक्वायरमेंट. थर्ड इज एन पर्पस. नाउ इट इज़ फिक्स्ड कैपिटल इज इन्वेस्टेड in fixed assets such as land, building, equipment, etc. On the other hand side, working capital is invested in short term assets such as cash, account receivable, inventories, etc. Next is in sources. Now fixed capital funding can come from selling shares, debentures, bond, long term loans, etc. And the working capital can be funded with short term loans, deposit, trade credit, etc. Objectives of investors. Now here the investor invests money in the fixed capital hoping to make future profit. On the other hand side, investors invest money in working capital for getting immediate returns. Next is in risk. Investment is a fixed capital implies more risk, and investment in the working capital is less risky. So with this we have completed with the entire chapter. So before winding up, we'll have one quick recapture. So today we have learned about the capital structure and its components, and we have also learned about the distinguish between the working capital and the fixed capital and working capital. So in the capital structure, we have learned in detail about the meaning, definition. We have seen the meaning of capital, we have seen the meaning of the structure, then we have seen the definition, two definitions. You can remember any one definition for your examination point of view, and its components. So components में अगर आप देखोगे तो पूरा liability side जो आपका बैलेंस शीट का रहता है वो आ जाता है. And we have seen the 6 points of fixed capital and working capital. So for your exams, distinguish between carries for 4 marks. So you can write all the 6 points. So it may be possible कि आपका एक पॉइंट रॉन्ग हो जाए या एक पॉइंट आप मिस कर लो, पर आप एग्जामिनेशन पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से देखोगे तो आप 6 के 6 पॉइंट्स लिखोगे तो अच्छा रहेगा. एंड यू नीड टू सी टू इट कि एग्ज़ाम्स में अगर आप डिस्टिंग्विश अटेम्प्ट करते हो तो दोनों साइड अगर करेक्ट होंगे तो ही आपको मार्क्स मिलेंगे, otherwise you are not eligible to get marks if one side is correct. So the assignment for the day will be define capital structure and its component and distinguish between fixed capital and working capital. So with this we have completed the entire first chapter, and you need to write the entire exercise in your book which is there in your textbook. That is question number 1, all the objectives you need to write. Then question number 2, explain the terms. Question number 3, I will be sharing the notes. And question number 4, that distinguish, that is directly given in your textbook. Question number 5, 6 and 7, you will get all the answers in the textbook itself. So you can write down the entire exercise in your book, and you need to write down because it will make an writing practice for you all. So thank you so much, students.